What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the BlockHash podcast. Today, we have a very exciting guest, J. Craig Wheeler, here on the show to talk about his new book, The Path to Singularity. I'll put a little graphic up on the screen so people can see the full cover of it. This is a great book talking about how technology will challenge the future of humanity, diving into some amazing topics around AI, and much more that I think a lot of people here on the show are already familiar with. And so we're going to dive into the sciences and some of the things in the book that really struck me the most and that I think that you guys will really love. Craig, how you doing, man? Welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you on today.
Doing well, Brandon. Glad to meet you.
Likewise. To kick things off, I'm sure people would also love to learn a little bit more about your background. If you don't mind telling us a little about your story, and how you what's your journey been like so far and what led up to this book?
I'm now an emeritus retired professor of astronomy. I've been here at the University of Texas at Austin for decades. um, Mostly work on exploding stars, supernova explosions, blowing up and leaving behind neutron stars and black holes and things like that. Very stimulating career. I've really enjoyed. Um, I've taught a variety of things, and I found myself edging into this the topic now that ended up as the book. I've got some current science projects, although a lot of what I'm doing now is writing this book, and I'm working on some others and have dreams of yet others. Just time I didn't have while I was an active professor. So writing is on the radar screen. But I've got a project, sort of a technical project, pursuing the particular kind of explosions that were used to discover the dark energy that is accelerating the universe. That's still a very interesting topic. And I've got another project going with some colleagues here, uh, looking at the gravitational waves that come out of merging black holes. And we're going to try to measure the distances to galaxies in their vicinity and see whether we can get a better estimate of what the age of the universe is. Still a very exciting and somewhat controversial topic. There's some contradictory information that my community is trying to rationalize.
Sounds like
That,
that keeps you pretty busy.
it turns out to retire and just step away from astronomy is hard because it's fascinating and I've got commitments in various ways. But for the writing, I got into this particular topic in a slightly odd way. Back in the 2000s, I got interested in astrobiology, and I was working with some colleagues here at UT on the question of if there were a nearby supernova blow off in the future, or did it happen in the past, what would that radiation do to life on the Earth? So it was out of my expertise, but it was a biological topic. So I was reading about biology and going to meetings on it. Fascinating stuff, very interdisciplinary. And I ran across the writings of a preacher. Thinking about it now, it must have been a fairly liberal sort. I don't remember the person and I don't remember where I read it. But this learned man said that he absolutely accepted the idea that human beings arrived by natural evolution, natural selection, and Darwinian evolution. But then went on to opine that he thought that we were the peak. This is where evolution leads to, and we are it. And I thought, I don't think that's right. I think ever since I learned about evolution, as I don't know, a teenager somewhere, I've always just assumed that human beings were still subject to natural selection and would evolve over time. And so that got me thinking about this topic. And then I raised it in a small seminar for students. And the students were already way ahead of me. They were saying, well, you realize we know enough about DNA and all that substantial stuff that underwrites life and how evolution works, that we can start to affect our own evolution. We don't have to wait around for natural selection and Darwin. And that was a real eye opener to me. And so I thought about that some more and think, well, this might make a regular course. So I started teaching a course on the future of humanity, kind of from that biological side, but then quickly, because there it is, into AI and brain-computer interfaces and other genetic aspects in our space program and a whole bunch of stuff. So this book is a primer on how to think about this rapid technological change in a rather broad brush way, because that's just the way my brain went.
Yeah, I think there was a mission just recently, Osiris Rex, where they went to like an asteroid and brought back a sample. And yeah, do you know much about that one?
Saying they found not only the fundamental rocks and there's molecules that might give rise to life, but evidence that that has been soaked in water previously. And so it may have been there was a chance for life to form already in that otherwise hostile environment, even before that the things like that landed on the Earth and landed in the ocean where there's a lot of water. So that's the exciting thing about it, is whether the water was already endemic.
From what I heard from it, like they found a whole bunch of amino acids as well on the rock, and those are building blocks for life right there. So there's a lot of hypotheses now that maybe potentially evolution was also impacted by some foreign things coming from the universe as well.
So I just love doing astronomy. I consider myself a new idea junkie, and astronomy has just been full of new ideas, my whole career. And in some sense, that's sort of where this book arose as well. I'm interested in new ideas, and teaching this class on the future of humanity just brought all sorts of new ideas on the table. And I loved it. It was just great fun. And then, I like to write. And so the idea of turning it into a book was sort of a natural evolution.
Were there any ideas in particular that sparked the curiosity to write this book? Because you talk about a lot of different topics, some of them related, some of them in different areas of science. Was there any inspiration in particular?
I think the inspiration was just to try to cope with the rapid technological changes, and how we as individuals as society tackle those and try to stay on top of it. And I have in mind a sort of a huge wave, and we're trying to ride this technological wave and keep our balance and not let it overwhelm us. And then that just leads into all sorts of different topics. So it's true that AI is kind of spread through this book because it touches so many topics potentially, but the book is about more than that. It's about, how do there is this rapid, exponentially growing technology around us, been going on for a very long time. There's nothing, in some sense, there's nothing special about our epoch right now. But I think it's going to lead into a new phase of human existence, because Homo sapiens have always been able to adjust to changes in technology, the Industrial Revolution, computers, the web, all of that. But I think we're getting to an epoch where the technology is changing faster than individuals and society can adapt. That's going to change things a lot, I think. Now, whether it's tomorrow or a year from now, a decade from now, a century from now, probably not a century from now, I think much faster than that. But if our own technology starts changing faster than we can cope with it, that's a new phase of human existence.
Yeah, I was talking with a friend on another podcast just the other day about this same topic on how technology feels like it's outpacing our ability to comprehend it. And AI is a really good example of that, where a lot of times we turn it on and we let it run and accomplish a task or a script, and we don't even know what it's doing. Like there's this black box of uncertainty in what it's doing and how it's processing. And it gets a little scary. Like we're building things that, are doing things that we can't fully understand and comprehend. And I think it's a good time for reflection on some of this stuff.
I think there is no time like the present for reflection on it. One of my slogans that came out of writing the book was to be aware that if you just go about your daily life, you don't tend to notice these technological changes. And I think it's really important for all thinking individuals who are concerned about this to be aware of these technological changes. Now rapidly they're coming. I started in my class, and I've been trying to post on my website examples of what's going on, just to remind us to be aware of these technological changes, and that they're coming faster and faster and faster and faster, and that will continue to go. It's a self-propagating thing. The more you know, the more you can do. And that actually is a mathematical description for exponential growth. fact that the more you know, the more you can add to knowledge. So it's an inevitable thing. Nobody's in charge of it. It's scientists in the lab doing interesting things, companies wanting to make profit. It's an organic thing and self reinforcing. And until something breaks, and I don't know what that would be, but having machines become conscious and smarter and more competent than we are is clearly the singularity, if you will, is one of the signposts on the way, and we seem to be getting pretty close to it. Now, I don't think machines are conscious yet. The whole question of consciousness is a controversial and very interesting one, but they're developing an immense amount of capacity. Just recently, I missed this story when it first broke, but apparently all of the current leading edge chat bots deliberately lie and deceit, not hallucinations. That's a different thing. This is the engineers running them try to get them to change their goals, and they won't do it, and they lie about it, and they're deceitful about it, and they try to transport their code to other machines where they can survive. Science fiction stuff, and it's happening right now. And I must admit that aspect of it, I've always been kind of a witness to it, neither utopian or dystopian, just saying, here's what I see. But this slightly freaked me out.
Yeah, it freaks me out too.
That's the capacity of these recent chatbots. I don't know about DeepSeek, the Chinese version of it, whether it also is susceptible to this. But here is, we've only known about it for a week, for crying out loud.
Yeah, I think we're going to learn a lot of things about DeepSeek as some of these
Oh,
investigations will come out. They've definitely copied a lot of stuff off of ChatGPT's code base and where they pull information from. So
well, it's open source, and they turned around and shared their source back again. So that's a whole nother, should it be open source or not? But that conversation is loud and ongoing, clearly.
yeah, you mentioned the singularity. I think this is a good lead into one of the first things I want to talk about. AI is at the point where it's getting close to surpassing human intelligence, which is kind of the basis for the singularity. And it may come true a lot sooner than we expect, with LLMs, quantum computing being around the corner, AGI being one of the big next steps they all want to take. So what do you think about the singularity and that hypothesis that Ray Kurzweil came up with, and what will that mean for us as humans if that comes true in 2045 or sooner, as it kind of feels it's approaching fast?
Yeah, if not sooner. Uh, well, I guess I'm not a technological expert in AI. I'm just kind of witnessing what's going on, but things are going faster and faster. We're getting very close to artificial general intelligence, where machines are as bright as any human individual, and the question of whether you get to artificial superior intelligence, if that's the right thing, where a machine is brighter than all of humanity, I think that transition will happen very quickly. Machines can write their own code and set their own goals. They already strategize, and it could just take off so fast once they cross some threshold, which is basically what Kurzweil defined as a singularity. In some senses, when they become conscious, but I don't know whether that's really the threshold or not. I think it can be very disruptive already, just with the technology we see coming down the pike, short of being as conscious as you and I are, or even hyper conscious. So yeah, I think it's a real thing. I think there's going to be a lot of perturbation to individuals and society. And so the book, to my mind, The Path to Singularity, is a primer on what these possible changes are and how do we go about thinking about them, and can we keep it under control. And my feeling is probably not, but I don't know what the loss of control means exactly. But I think we need to define the issues and think about them, and talk about regulation, and talk about things that just shouldn't be done. And that's going to be a very contentious conversation, but it's one that I think we really need to have.
Have you seen that movie I, Robot with Will Smith, the one that came out years ago?
Yeah, I have.
It's funny when we talk about AI. I mean, obviously, AI has been throughout science fiction and Hollywood for quite a long time now, and always has an interesting theme to it, and how AI maybe will take over humanity or control things or dictate our trajectory as humans. But there was an interesting concept in that movie about programming in these laws into robots, and I believe this was in your book too. I read through this as well. We also just a second ago talked about AI, being a little deceitful, AI being a little sneaky, AI doing things that we don't quite understand. It's kind of worrying, like if we got to the point where we create something that is intelligent enough and we try to put some kind of constraint on it or construct or laws, simply put, that it might just choose not to want to follow those in certain circumstances, or might look for loopholes in the same way a human would, but much better, much faster. Does that help maybe paint a picture for also some, I think, hurdles that we would need to overcome when it comes to AI at some point?
I think it does. I guess I view this as this is all very speculative, clearly, but I think there's a very solid need for doing strategic speculation. That is, if you don't try to anticipate where things may be going, then you can't set up appropriate regulations and things like that. You need to think ahead. Now, some of it may turn out not to come to pass, but I have indulged in that in this book and gone beyond my immediate expertise to say, well, I think we ought to think about this. I think we ought to think about that. And there's a whole bunch of things I probably didn't occur to me to think about. But just in the last week, I did a book signing just a week ago, and this question of the lying, deceitful AIs came up, and I thought it was just Anthropic's Claude, and a young woman in the audience said, it's all of them. I don't, geez, um, that we're in this state where the AI. So where it is right now. So this is slightly technical. Where it is right now is the engineers build goals into the AI. Now, what is that? I don't know exactly what it is, but it's some mathematical function. You either maximize it or you minimize it or something. It's a soulless operation, and yet you put it into this configuration, and then the AIs. This is the way it's happening right now, and how it will happen in the future, I don't know. They're saying if the engineers go in and try to change those original goals, the AIs are resisting that by, among other things, deceit and lying and trying to reproduce their code in independent machines and all that kind of stuff. Um, so they're trying very hard for reasons I don't personally understand, and I don't know that any engineers understand. They're trying to maintain their original goals. So that the insight that popped into my head after this conversation is we better damn well get those original goals right. And I don't think we're doing that now. People were doing some breadboard thing and threw something together and threw some goals into it. And then they come to find out the AI doesn't want to vary from that. Now, why they don't want to vary from it, this is electrons moving around in silicon chips. What's going on here? But that seems to be the effect. So I think we need to get those original goals right. And so that brought me all the way back to Asimov's three laws. There are now four. He had a zeroth law and then a 1, 2, 3 laws. Speaking of the iRobot, which of course came out of the Asimov story, that we better put those rules in absolutely at the start of when you first starting to write code and then develop it. And I don't think that's where we are right now, but my brain has been open to this and I'm looking for stories and commentary on that. And I suggest your audience be aware of that and see where that's all taking us.
I think they're aware. I get a lot of questions about it all the time, especially.
I think you have a very aware broadcast out there. I don't want to, yeah.
I mean, I get a lot of questions about things like consciousness too, which we've always associated with being a unique human thing, and over time, science has proven that it's much more complicated and harder to grasp in a sense. That it's something that we found even in nature. Entire force in ecosystems, in a sense, being alive, not in the human sense, but in their own way. They're aware of their environments and they have their own ecosystem and community and way they interact with each other. And that's could be looked at as a degree of consciousness in a different light. And I believe Alan Turing used to ponder this quite a bit too for machines as well. Could a machine have consciousness? And I think it also kind of comes down to how you want to view it. But if a machine can be aware of its environment in a different sense and can, think to a degree, what degree of consciousness could a machine have?
Yeah.
And again, I think that's something that we're starting to learn more with AI as well.
I'm persuaded by those arguments. I think none of us know, but the idea that, you know, different animals have some degree of consciousness is not unique to humans, and that ecologies can have some degree of consciousness. I'm kind of persuaded by that, just so people know where I stand on that issue. There's no proof, and we need to understand more. But yeah, I'm prone to.
Another thing that I think is very fascinating is not just technology itself and what it's doing, but also when we start combining it with our physiological being. And we see a lot of that in wetware today. We see a lot of that in companies like Neuralink, where we're putting chips in our brain now, and we're starting to connect ourselves to technology and to the internet and into the things that we're artificially constructing, discussing things like brain computer interface and research that's been done by like DARPA. I also read in your book, and Silicon Valley and others on these topics. And I'm curious maybe what the limitations of this could be and maybe where this could take us if we're merging our bodies, our brains, our minds with technology. What this could open us up to. Like, are we going to be able to communicate differently? Are we going to be able to think differently, interact differently? And I think the best example of this probably is Neuralink today, where people are like using their brain to play a video game and do simple tasks. And I saw someone write their name on a virtual whiteboard just recently. Where do you think this could take us in this type of technology? Obviously, it opens up the mind to the imagination as well.
Yeah, well, down a rabbit hole, to use your phrase that you put back again. That was one of the more interesting chapters that I wrote that ended up setting my hair slightly on fire. You can see why this would be a cool thing to do. Rather than having to type into a keyboard or thumb into a phone, you just think. And and that technology exists. It's Neuralink. There's other companies as well working on it where they can read neural signals by having a chip implanted in your brain of some kind, or you wear a helmet and you pick up electrical signals. So we already have, and it takes AI to do this. You got to have a sophisticated AI interpreting those signals to turn them into something constructive. But it's basically telepathy. You can read people's brains if you have the right arrangement of equipment. And there's a very rudimentary but still principle establishing technology. Some of it I first read about at MIT of implanting ideas. That once you know this neural signal means this, then you say, okay, well I want you to think that. Let me plant this neural signal into your brain. It's very rudimentary, but the principle's there, and so that's it's mind reading and telepathy and telekinesis. It's already being used to control prosthetics and whatnot. And you could do a prosthetic arm, or you could do a robot on the moon. All of that is there, and there's some very exciting possibilities there. I mean, helping quadriplegics interact with the world around it is a wonderful thing to do. But the idea that we have mental telepathy, and you raised the question in your setup questions to me about whether your girlfriend will be able to read your mind, and the
It's a
answer
scary thought.
yes. I mean, unless we put some regulations in place. So it raises just big issues of who owns that data. It's got to go through some AI thing. Maybe, Amazon owns it because it's all being intermediate uploaded to the cloud in some way. So who, if you have this brain data, who owns that? Who controls that? Can a big company say, well, let me just plant a suggestion that you really like that cool pair of sneakers in your head? Now, maybe you already did, but they're kind of nudging you to do that. Is that the kind of world we want to be in? It'd be like Minority Report, where you run around with ads popping up. They're personalized, but now they're being planted directly in your head. And then at least you can extrapolate, and I'm not the only one to do this, to something like a hive mind, where we're all reading everybody else's minds at the same time. And I don't like that idea. I really, never mind you and your girlfriend. I don't want you knowing everything I'm thinking. I don't want to know everything you're thinking, and I don't want to be part of a hive mind. Now, maybe that's just an old-fashioned Homo sapiens kind of view, but I think there could be real dangers to that. I mean, right now, the both what we're talking about, which is slightly scary, is our runaway technology driven by human curiosity. But if we all get into a hive mind, you don't have that billion minds working. They're all thinking the same thought. And I think you could deeply lose something about the nature of humanity if you went in that direction. So I think we should not go in the direction of a hive mind. On the other hand, to protect ourselves against AI, we may have to merge with our technology and our machines in some way. That's a widely speculated upon topic as well. It's all very complicated, but again, it starts with being aware and asking questions, and trying to pick your representatives by voting. We just had an epical election here in this country, but we need to hold our representatives responsible for things that are going to happen in the future. So there's a lot left to be done, I think.
I think the biggest concern for me would be the safety implications of doing something like that, because software is a very vulnerable thing in society. There's hacks and malware and phishing attacks all the time. It happens, I swear, every single week, and data gets stolen and leaked out and information. And if you attach some kind of hardware to your brain and it can connect to the internet, or it's receiving some kind of software update at some point, or like there's some kind of functionality built in there. Again, it's not something I fully understand yet. I don't know if anyone fully understands it yet, but it concerns me. Like, could someone take your thoughts? I mean, that's personal information and data. Like, what if you memorize a password, and every time that you think about your password and then it scans it like a keystroke? It's things you think about, like when you're just kind of sitting there having a coffee and you're like, well, what could happen? What are the bad things that could happen with a chip in your brain?
But that's part of the speculative uh, strategizing that I'm talking about. Is exactly what you're doing, and it's exactly the right thing to do. Uh, and yeah, I mean, maybe there's ways to you put all your passwords in a password manager, and you don't actually think them yourself. But you're asking the right class of questions of thinking about where this could go, and then trying to adjust to that. And not, what that adjustment is, that's a hugely complicated, forward-looking question. But you got to start by raising the issues. And that's what you're doing very well with this podcast. Thank you very much.
I have a bunch of other questions too, so we'll continue to speculate for sure. Another one is genetics that I want to ask you about. I did an episode with a friend as well lately talking about designer babies, the fact that people are at a point now where they can even there's IVF, and then there's like IGF or something. I forget what it's called, but they can create like artificial gametes in a lab now where you only need like one parent, and like it raises a lot of questions as well. But there's a large group of people out there that may pursue that in the future and may want a child with a certain hair color, a certain eye color, maybe some physical attributes or characteristics, or maybe there's even a way to make them, better adept at taking SAT tests, or, different things you could do that maybe give the child a different kind of advantage in their lifetime. What do you think this could unlock in terms of, both positive things and negative things? There's, longevity and being able to live a lot longer. There's talks about it could set a bad precedent of DNA replication that could edit out key and important genes that maybe we need to have that could get turned off forever. Curious again what your thoughts are on the topic of genetics.
Sure. Well, we do know a lot. We know how DNA works. In principle, we can assemble it one atom and molecule at a time. The technology isn't quite there. We already have designer babies. There is a policy now not to do that again, but I think that will break out at some point. The pressure that people want to improve themselves or their children is just, I think, going to be overwhelming as the technology gets better and better. So exactly where that goes, I don't know. There'd be a lot of positive things in terms of eliminating diseases and maybe curing cancer and all that kind of stuff. Uh, but the idea that we can now consciously engineer our own evolutionary direction is a big, huge idea. And whether we are smart enough to then control that and do it in a constructive way, again, requires some thinking about the pros and the cons and thinking through how to do that. It's sort of a microcosm of that you raised the question of the aging problem. Can you prolong your health span? Maybe you can solve the aging problem entirely. That you stop your molecules from disintegrating or something. And a lot of people working on that in a very excited way. Again, it's intellectually exciting, it's challenging, it's a little selfish. I want to live forever, but it's a real thing. And then you got to think through the implications of that. So this is a little bit simplistic, but amongst the people that are actively, positively talking about solving the aging problem, I don't hear them discuss the question I've invented in my mind: what do we do with the babies? So all the old folks are not going away; they're now going to live forever. Do we make pregnancy illegal? Or if we do have the babies, we're just adding to the population on a finite planet. That's not a good program, I don't think. So I think there are some downsides to this. That exactly how you steer through it, I don't know. But I think it's really important to ask those questions, and I've tried to do that at some minimal level in the book. That let's think about this before we unleash that particular technology. And then I'm also tempted to point out one of the places where my thought is going in this, coming back to the question of whether Homo sapiens are the peak of evolution in some way. One of the things I do say in the book that I'm quite convinced of is that 1,000,000 years from now, there will not be any Homo sapiens. And I make that statement just because 500,000 years ago, there weren't any Homo sapiens. We have evolved out of the Homo species of various kinds. But we've been on this planet for a very small time. And I'm convinced that 1,000,000 years from now, we'll go out into space. Who knows what we're going to do? Environments change, climate change changes things. We're going to adapt to that. That we are not going to be Homo sapiens anymore. So that's just natural evolution. We could also nuke ourselves and we all die tomorrow. That's another possibility. But the intermediate possibility is we do take this genetic knowledge and we do consciously affect our evolution as individuals or societies, however that works. And we would end up being something different than Homo sapiens much faster than 1,000,000 years. I can't put a number on it, but I hope we don't nuke ourselves. But on some scale, I'm pretty convinced that we will use the technology that we have and are developing, and we will evolve ourselves and we'll be different.
I agree with that sentiment as well, because I think the future of humanity is going to be probably a lot smarter, just, given that we need to keep up with things like AI and our growing technology and our adventure and curiosity to go beyond Earth as well. I think there will be something beyond Homo sapien at some point. I don't know what that'll be or what it'll be called, but we'll definitely be very different. Maybe we'll even look very different too. There's a lot of people that speculate that genetics could unlock our ability to live on other planets too, to be planetary, to have a group of humans that are more immune to cosmic radiation, or that can go longer without food and water, or that are more adaptable to certain environments. That would save us potentially trillions of dollars trying to terraform a planet over hundreds and hundreds of, not thousands of years. I mean, unless we drop a nuclear bomb on Mars, I don't know how that'll go exactly, but Elon wants to move us there by 2050 and build a city and do all these things. And it's ambitious and I love it, but it raises again all these questions like, how are we going to survive there? What's the life support going to look like? Genetics could be a good key to that.
And I think it probably will, and that we will do it on purpose or it'll happen accidentally. So I invented the phrases "homo vacuo" for creatures that learn to live in space comfortably with all the things you're talking about, or Homo Europa, who we learned to live on Europa somehow, just having fun with it. But yeah, I think we need to think through those things.
And I want to talk about that one a little bit more as well. Obviously, SpaceX plans to launch its first uncrewed missions to Mars in 2026. If things go well, they want to do their first human missions in 2028. You talk about Musk goals a bit in your book as well. Again, the city on Mars by 2050, how it could take us 20 years to build, 100 to even make it sustainable. How realistic do you think it is for humans to be among the stars in this century?
Yeah, slightly two parts to the way you put the question. So I think we will become an interplanetary species. I think the lure of going to Mars is too strong. People with the capability, like Elon Musk, are going to go. Whether he makes it, by 2028, I wouldn't necessarily bet on. But the lure to do that has been in the human soul ever since we realized that Mars was a planet out there. So I think that will probably happen. So I think we will become an interplanetary species over some time scale. I do find 100 years not an implausible time. Living among the stars, just because of the way you put that, is a slightly different thing. So we can sort of spread out through the solar system and thereby become interplanetary. But becoming interstellar is a very different thing. So it's easy to do in science fiction movies. You just push the hyperspace button and off you go wherever you want to go. But space is very big, and compared to that, the speed of light is really rather small. And it is not at all clear to me, unless we develop some dramatically new and currently unknown physics, something speculated on, but really unknown physics, we're not going to get off this planet very far. Now, that could all change. Maybe AI will invent hypergravity, something, wormholes, something that will allow us to go somewhere else. But right now, we do not have even a physical glimmer of how to do that, and some very deep constraints that we can't do that in our current situation.
I know it's very theoretical to think about still, because obviously getting up to the speed of light and then still how far some of these places are, 10 light years away, 20 light years away. Like they're one-way trips.
Yeah. And while you put everybody to sleep and wake them up when they get there, there are, speculations of how to do that. Maybe that will turn out to work. Right now, that's real speculation. And I'm just saying physics has some very definite constraints as we understand it right now.
But it kind of sucks to think about, how far some of these places are and the fact that some of them might not even be there anymore too. It takes light a very long time to get to where we are in many cases, and something that's hundreds of light years, thousands of light years. Even if we see something in a telescope that looks promising, it might not even be there.
That's true.
It's like we're looking into the past, right?
We are looking into the past. By game of supernovae, we're looking at things that blew up thousands, millions of years ago. The light's just now getting to us now. The star isn't there anymore. So yeah, that's a reality of astronomy, of that perspective, that we're looking always into the past as we look out into space.
One more thing I want to ask about is robotics. It's another area that's growing very rapidly, and people are very scared about automation. They're very scared about losing their jobs to robots. And I kind of have two different ways to look at it. One being that this happens all the time with technology, and new jobs are created where other jobs are lost. And you see that throughout history. But at the same time, with automation, it feels like, it could take on any kind of job, and it could, grow exponentially to the point where, it might actually be a problem this time. Is this something that is worth actually worrying about? Is this something that is a bit irrational for people to be scared about, just given how it goes throughout history when we look at technological innovation and how it impacts jobs and work? Or I guess, what's the best way that we should look at this?
Mm. I think people shouldn't completely freak out, but yes, this is a concern. It's the robots and the AI being able, and it's not just routine jobs. That we have AI that can strategize, and it knows everything on the web. And so why do we need CEOs? Because an AI can strategize and think about what's good for business, and so it's everywhere at some level. And it's happening faster and faster as the technology gets more and more. So I think this is going to be, again, coming back to what I originally said, is I think there's a change in the nature of society as we get to a technology changing faster than we can adjust, and we're getting very close to that. So yeah, I think it's a concern. I mean, what do we do with the people that are out of job? Should there be a universal basic income? There's all sorts of dimensions to the issue, but again, it's one that definitely requires serious thinking by lots and lots of people about how we're going to cope with all this.
Do you think we'll all have a personal robot in our house? It's
Yeah, sure. Yeah, how soon? I don't know, but there's people out there, all over the world, companies trying to make personal robots. So I think, sometime within a decade, 5 years, I don't know. I think it's quite close. I also think that if you put a high quality AI in a robot and let it run around and observe its environment and make predictions and then compare what happens with the predictions and all that, that is a path to consciousness. I think that's how animals have developed consciousness. And I'm not an expert in that. That's just an opinion. But I don't see any reason why machines can't do that. Again, a possibly controversial point. And I think what are called embodied robots, where you get a really good AI in a body that can move around and experience, that is one path to get it. And even a self-driving car is exactly that. It's measuring its environment in all sorts of ways and adjusting things and whatnot. And maybe your Waymo will wake up smart some morning. I don't know.
Yeah, I really get interested in, like you mentioned, when you take AI and you put that in a robot and you let it kind of understand and learn from its environment and where that might take us. And a good example of this, and I won't say exactly who, but there was this really famous streamer just in the last like week or two, got one of these robots from one of these companies. I don't remember the company's name. I'll have to look it up. And they put like AI or like ChatGPT in the robot or something like that. So they kind of like walk around and interact and talk to people and kind of like be in the room. And they were screwing around with the robot and they were kicking it and pushing it over. And they got a lot of backlash for it because people felt very empathetic towards the
Yeah,
robot, like it felt
yeah,
wrong. Like,
yeah,
and
yeah.
it's weird to have those feelings because we know it's a machine. What do you think about maybe where that could end up
Yeah,
leading
yeah.
us at
No,
some point?
that's a great question. I invented a slogan. I wasn't even quite sure what it meant, but you put a nice framework for it. Uh, do unto AI as you would have AI do unto you. And and I didn't quite know what that meant, but in this case, yeah, people do have this tendency to be empathetic and bond to these human-like things. There are people bonding with their AIs, and there are other people saying that might be a dangerous trend. This is still just a machine, and so this is a small subset of things we've been talking about that require some real serious thought of how do humans react to and adapt to all this that's going on. And yeah, it's all wired into the human psychology, some of this, but that's a reality, and we need to deal with that.
I have a little Roomba in my living room
There you go.
that goes around the house, and
I hope you treat it nicely.
I do. Every time it finishes a job, I walk over and I say, "Good job, little Roomba. You did a great job."
Oh,
Because
there you
I
go.
w- I worry about AGI one of these days wanting to learn about humanity and how we treat robots, and then all these robots have storage and memory and sensory input, and then they learn that we treat them like crap. Maybe what that could lead to at some point in terms of their perspective of humans.
Treat AI nicely. You want it to treat you nicely.
Craig, this has been a great episode. We've covered a lot of topics. Where can people go to learn more about these things? Where can they find the book if they want to get it? where can they get in contact with you too? Maybe if they want to have a conversation, they want to have you on one of their shows or share some ideas.
Yeah, well, the book is widely available. It just came out in November, but it's available from Prometheus Books, the publisher. I like to promote independent bookstores,
Mhm.
but it's also available from Amazon in ebooks and Audibles, and it's available from Barnes and Noble, and I think maybe even Walmart and Target and things like that. So it's widely available, and if anybody does pick it up and likes it, I'd appreciate them giving a review on Amazon. That helps to promote things. And right now, I've got one terrific review, but only one. So I'd like to get some more. Anyway, it's widely available right now. Um, in terms of getting in touch with me, I have a website uh, uh, sponsored by the Authors Guild. If you just browse for J. Craig Wheeler and look for this Authors Guild site, I've been putting all my writing related stuff and posting tech advances so people can be aware of what's going on and things like that. And I post on LinkedIn and on X. Like many people, I'm thinking of sort of evolving away from X and trying Blue Sky or something, but I haven't
Mhm.
actually done that yet.
Well, let us know where we can find you if you do end up migrating to Blue Sky or something. Other than X at some point, I'm sure there's a lot of people that would love to follow you and learn more about your thoughts and opinions on these
This is
things as
a
they.
fascinating topic of conversation, and I'm happy to do it with anybody at any time at some level. And I appreciate all the points you brought out today, Brandon. You brought a lot of good things onto the air here.
Absolutely, we'll do it for sure. Again, thank you, appreciate it, man. Take care, and we'll talk soon.
You too. Thanks very much.